Hi everyone, so Mrs. Smith here again, and today we are going to be talking about exam technique. And the exam I want to look at today is the biology specimen paper for Edexcel. So let's take a look at it. Okay, so here we go. This is the biology paper. Now this is the first time that you're looking at exam papers and how to do it. So we're going to be focusing on exam technique. There are three things that we need to know about, and that is the first thing, we need to know the science. That's what your lessons are for. We are teaching you the science. So one, we have to know science. Okay, the second thing number two, okay, we need to be able to remember the science. We need to be able to get that information in and out of our heads, and that's what the last two videos have been about. So this is the third thing we need to know, which is how to answer exam questions. And it's a different skill to being able to remember science or talk about science. It's being able to answer an exam question. And if you can do this skill, you will get a better grade than if you can't. Okay, so normally when people see this, they get a bit of a panic because it's an exam paper. So this is why it's so important to print the entire exam paper, because you need to get used to filling it in. So you take your favourite pen that you like writing with and you fill in your last name. You fill in all your other names. If you know your centre and candidate number, fill it in. Okay, get used to it. This is what you do before the exam. In every single exam, you fill this in. And if you are used to doing it, it's nice and relaxing and it helps you calm down. Okay, it lowers your blood pressure. So anyway, please notice the rules. You need a calculator and a ruler. So make sure you've got a calculator and a ruler before you do any science exam. To be fair, before you do any exam, except for your maths non-calculator paper, make sure you've got a working calculator and a ruler. You know, even for English, at least you'll have something to do after the exam. Use a black ink or ballpoint pen. I've got blue ink, but I would have a black ink cartridge in if I were doing my exams. Answer all the questions. This one's really important. Some of them will say answer 2 of questions 1 to 4 and 3 of questions 5 to 10. So make sure you're only answering the questions that you need to answer. 100 marks, and it's an hour 45. So that's 1 mark a minute plus 5 minutes. So that gives you an indication of the time. Now, the first time you're going to go through this, we're not going to worry about the time. So I've picked out a couple of questions to look at just because they are slightly more pertinent to what we've been learning about. So the first question I want to look at is question number 2. By all means, pause this video, have a go at it yourself, have a go at the whole paper. I will be looking at 3 questions. Okay, so antibiotics can be used to treat chlamydia, which is a sexually transmitted infection. What type of pathogen causes chlamydia? Because this is the first time you're seeing it, we're focusing on exam technique, not memory. Go look it up if you don't know, but hopefully you'll realise if we can use antibiotics, it must be a bacteria. So we put an X in the box. Just like that. Figure 4 shows the new cases of chlamydia diagnosed each year in the UK. And then we've got to draw on 2 new graphs. So this is 2 new bars on the graph. So this is where you're going to need your ruler. Okay, so it's not going to be easy for me to do this while holding the phone. So I'm going to just pause it and use my pencil to draw the lines on, and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like. Be aware that you should really be doing this in ink rather than pencil for the exam. I've gotten away with it because I've pressed down really hard, so you can see it is at the 4,800 and the 4,100. Okay, so plot this data on the graph. It's only worth 1 mark. So that means that they're not doing anything nasty to you. They've not given you any nasty axes that you've got to try and figure it out with. Okay, describe the trend in cases. Can I just point out, question 2, you could figure out just because of the antibiotic thing. B, you needed none of your knowledge for. And C, describe the trend. You are reading a graph. Okay, so this means that hopefully you're seeing that memory isn't always the most important thing. Being able to do the science is quite important, but if you go into it and can't remember everything, there will still be some marks for you. Do try and remember everything though. So what does it do? Okay, describe the trend. So it goes up until 2009. Okay, if I just say it goes up, if we take a look, it's worth 2 marks. Do you see that little number 2 there? So that means I need to say 2 things. So it goes up until 2009 is one thing. And then let's take a look. It drops by 7 boxes. So it drops by 700 cases in 2009, from 2009 to 2010. Okay, so it drops by 700 cases in 2010 or from 2009 to 2010. Okay, so that is 2 things, and usually on 2 marks they do want you to include a number. So there we go, we've done that. Why are people more likely to have gonorrhea if they've got chlamydia? They're both sexually transmitted infections. So why? So hopefully we can think of how you get infected with these. Yeah, that's a graph that I've drawn.
This.
Yes, so needless to, you can hear one of my sons talking to me. You don't need absolute perfect silence. You can hear the TV in the background. You can revise with things going on around you. So why do they become infected? 2 marks. Okay, if you've got one STI, you're obviously not using a barrier method such as a condom, and therefore things can get, if you're not using a barrier, you can get other infections as well. I'm not going to write all these down at the moment, just simply because I've got a little one and I want to do it fairly quickly. It's a sexually transmitted infection. Explain how HIV can lead to AIDS. Okay, so we want to say that HIV, it's 2 marks. HIV attacks the immune system. It attacks the white blood cells. Either of those should be fine. What's the second mark for? The white blood cell, with fewer white blood cells, then other infections can infect and kill you more easily, which is when you've got an immunodeficiency syndrome. So it reduces your white blood cells until other infections can attack you more easily. So that's how HIV leads to AIDS. Once you have done that, the next thing to do is to get a copy of the mark scheme, and you need to go through this and see if you get the same answers. If you do not get the same answers as this, you do not get the mark. Okay, I can't be clearer about that. You need to have the exact wording that they've got. If you don't have the exact wording, so for example, with the last one I wrote down, let's get this in focus. So we need trend increases to 2009 and a decrease in number of cases in 2010 and the correct manipulation of the data. So there you go. We have got that there. If I didn't have the correct manipulation of the data, I wouldn't get the second mark. So be really, really hard on yourself. Be really nasty. The examiner doesn't know you. The examiner isn't going to go, oh, I like them. They're nice. Let's give them the mark. That's not going to happen. Be really harsh on yourself. Learn how to get all the marks, because then that way you'll get them in the real one. Okay, so let's go for another question. Okay, middle of the test paper, question 5. So here we go, cell division. So this should be hopefully a nice revision for everyone. The nucleus of a daffodil has 46 chromosomes. What's in the pollen grain? If you don't know the answer, this is the first time through, go look it up. What's pollen? Pollen is the male gamete of the plant. It's a gamete, it's a sex cell, which means it's going to have half the number of chromosomes. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then you need to learn this. So you need to go and either watch a lesson video, go to BBC Bitesize, go to GCSE Pod, go to anything like that. Watch a lesson, read a lesson, okay? Or you can watch a revision video if you're like, oh, I think I know this, but I'm not sure. We're doing this for exam technique. We're not doing this to see what mark you'd get if this was your real exam. We're going to do that next video. Okay, so the number of chromosomes is half of 46, which is 23. You might want to use your calculator for that. There's nothing stopping you. If your maths is not your strong point, use your calculator, you've got it. Humans share 35% of their DNA with a daffodil. The human genome contains 6,600 million bases. Calculate the number of bases that are the same as a daffodil. Okay, so that is... Right, the answer is in something million. So I need to do 6600 multiplied by 35%, which is 0.35. And here I will need my calculator. Okay, so there we go. There is the sum, and the answer is 2,310. Please note I have written down my working. Same for maths papers. Always show how you get the answer. If you have done something a little bit wrong, then you will still get partial credits. Okay, and we want you to get as many marks as possible. Learning how to do exams is about learning how to get as many marks as possible and writing down your working, especially when there's more than one mark. You need to do that. Figure 9 shows the development of a human embryo from a fertilised egg. Explain how many cells are produced from one fertilised egg after 2 cell divisions by mitosis. So this one shouldn't be too hard. So cell grows and divides to become 2 cells by mitosis. Sorry, you are watching me right there. It's not very clear. So a cell grows and then divides into 2 by mitosis. 2 cells become 4. 4 cells become 8. 8 cells to 16, and so on and so forth. It's worth 2 marks. So we know that mitosis is cell division, and that gets you to double the amount of cells each time. Okay, next part of question 5. Which process causes the divided cells to become specialised? So, meiosis. Meiosis is a different type of cell division. Cloning, no, that would make them the same. Cytokinesis, the movement of cells. No. Incidentally, cyto, meaning cell. Kinesis, you might recognise from kinetic energy. So this is as much of a language lesson as anything else. So it can't be A, B or D. It must therefore be C, differentiation, making things different, making them specialised. Yes. If you don't know the answer for these multiple choice ones, the least you can do is eliminate the wrong ones. A student wanted to observe dividing cells under a microscope. They squashed the root tip of an onion plant on the microscope slide. Should the students describe how the students... Oh, that's not focusing very well. Describe how the student should use a light microscope to view the squashed root tip. So we need to say, okay, so we've got a slide. We need to put slide on the stage. Focus the eyepiece. It's worth 3 marks. Focus. It's worth 3 marks, so I better write something else. Use lowest objective to focus. Then move to higher magnification. Okay, put slide on the stage. Actually, you know what? That looks like it might say stage, so I'm going to just be really, really careful with my T. There we go. Examiners need to be able to read your writing. That's as much a part of exam technique as anything else. Focus the eyepiece, use lowest objective to focus, then move to higher magnification. That's 3 things. Even though the slide was at the correct magnification, the student could not see the chromosomes in the dividing cells. What could be done to the slide to make the chromosomes more visible? I would use an E&O dye. So just because I used to do this for work, that's so I can immediately remember it, because the amount of times I did that when I was working in medical research. So use E&O stain. Okay, and again we then turn to our mark scheme and we mark it. Let's take a look at that 3-mark question. Let's see if I would have gotten that right. So let's just find the bit of the mark scheme. Here we go. An answer that combines knowledge and understanding. So I need to know something and I need to understand it twice. Place the slide on the stage of the microscope and look through the eyepiece lens. So I've said put the slide on the stage, but I didn't say look through the eyepiece. Will I get it? Turn the focusing wheel to obtain a clear image when looking through the eyepiece. Well, that's focusing the eyepiece, isn't it? And then start by using the lowest objective and then increase the magnification and refocus. So I'm just going to grab a red pen. So when I initially read this, I thought it might be worth 2, but let's see. Start by using the lowest objective is 1 mark, and then increase the magnification is 1 mark. So lowest objective, increase magnification, put slide on the stage and focus the eyepiece. That would indicate that I am placing the slide on the stage and looking through the eyepiece. So it shows that I'm using the eyepiece. So I would say that actually would get me the mark, because it says I've put it on there and I'm looking at the eyepiece. I'm starting with the lowest objective, which is a definite mark, then move to a higher. If you disagree with me, by all means, don't give yourself the mark. Just say, no, you only get 2. But I think just because Yeah, just because it indicates that I know that I'm looking through the eyepiece there. I would 90% of the time the examiner would give me that, I would say. Again, it might be worth being nasty to yourself just to make sure that the 10% of examiners would give you it as well. Okay, last question I want to go through. Both 9 and 10 have got a 6-mark essay question in, and I do want to cover those. Question 10 is on the Drosophila and genetics, and I'll be honest, my first degree was medical genetics. I would quite happily do that to a stupidly intense level of knowledge which you don't need. So I'm going to stick to something that isn't one of my intense passions, and let's go with the waist to hip measurements to determine the risk of cardiovascular disease. So waist to hip ratio is just the waist divided by the hip. So let's do that. We have got 830 millimeters, so that would be 86 centimeters, sorry, 83 centimeters, and we're going to divide that by 990 millimeters. Be really careful. Question 9, we're quite a way through the paper now. They are going to throw you some things like changing the units just to throw you a bit. So you can do it in meters or you can do it in millimeters. So you could do 830 millimeters divided by 990 millimeters, or you could do 0.83 meters divided by 0.99 meters. I'm one of those strange people who actually would prefer to do it in centimetres, because I can convert into centimetres a lot more easily than metres and millimetres. Don't ask me why my brain works like that, it just does. So anyway, there's my answer. 0.83 recurring equals 0.83 recurring. But they've said give your answer to 2 decimal places. They don't care if it's recurring or not. They only want 2 decimal places. So my answer is 0.84. Remember to round up. Just in case you're worried about units, because normally we do like units for things in science. Meters divided by meters, it's going to cancel each other out. So because it's cancelled each other out, we have no units. This does happen sometimes in science, that there are no units, and that's absolutely fine. Happens a lot more in chemistry. With physics, you definitely need units. Okay, so dieting can reduce the effects of cardiovascular disease. 40 obese people are going to take part in the test. So we've controlled the age. The obese people are between 20 and 30. What other factors should we control? Okay, so let's have a think. What else would we need to control? Is it fair to test people of both genders? Because we know that men put on fat different to women. No, women store fat differently to men. So I would say they would have to be same gender. Okay, what else? Maybe we would want to look at the types of food they ate. So would a meat eater and a vegetarian, would that be a fair thing? So, okay, so we might want to look at similar diets, e.g., you know what, I'm just going to write vegan because it's fewer letters. And that's absolutely fine in an exam. I've said vegetarian, but you know what? Vegan's fewer letters. And a vegan diet's different to a meat diet, so that's great. Similar diet. Along the same veins, actually. Similar fitness, similar activity, exercise activity. it says 2 marks, but because it's control variables, you can write about 50 of those quite easily. So there's no harm in writing an extra one just to ensure that you do get the mark. Devise a plan scientists could use to test the effectiveness of the new diets. Well, how do we test the effectiveness of a diet? We weigh ourselves at the start and the end. We want to test the effectiveness of the new diet. So I suppose we'd want some of the people on the new diet and some of them on the old diet, or not doing a diet, or the same diet, or whatever then, and maybe weekly weigh-ins. That sounds about right, because you do that at Weight Watchers, don't you? So, weigh in at start. Then you'd have 20 people on new diet, 20 people on old diet. And what was the last one I said? Oh yeah, weekly weigh-ins. To monitor progress. Just take a look at how I'm laying this out, by the way. Bullet points are absolutely great on non-essay questions because it means the examiner knows that you think you're making a new point and there's a new thing to mark. If you are doing this in an exam, the paper will be larger than this. I've just printed it out so that it's, if you can see it, it's A5 rather than A4, the pieces of each sheet. So you'd have a bit more space, but if this happens to you in an exam, if you run out of space, even if it's for just one word, like that little word progress there, you absolutely must ask for a new piece of paper and write 9BII progress, because this is going to be scanned into a computer. That's why we don't write in these areas. You can absolutely write in those areas, it just won't be scanned and marked. So what you would need to do is get a new piece of paper, because the only bit that will be scanned is from the top here down to the bottom bit, and your last word would be missed out. As I said, I'm doing exam technique with you, so you might as well learn this. Okay, next bit. Smoking's a lifestyle factor that can have an effect on diseases. There's a nice graph showing you about men and women and the trends for smoking. Explain how the changes in trends for smoking may affect the occurrence of cardiovascular disease. Now, this is one of the few times I would actually say go and look at the mark scheme before you do it, especially if this is the first time of doing a 6-mark essay, because it will tell you what you need. And then you've got to try and put this into an essay. We've got to interpret the graph and evaluate it. And we need to link reducing smoking and cardiovascular disease, 3 marks for each. And it tells you for the 6 marks, which is what we're going for. We're always going for this. We can interpret and evaluate the information, demonstrating skills of synthesizing relevant understanding. Okay. And we support it with a linkage and application of knowledge and understanding. All right, so let's have a go at this. I don't want to take up too much time because I'm aware that this is almost half an hour already. So how it can affect cardiovascular disease. Okay, so let's start off with some numbers. So in 1960, about 81% of men smoked. Fewer and fewer men smoked, so that by 2008, about 20% of men smoked. That's manipulating the data. So in 1960, 80% of men, and how many women? About 22%. Okay, I'm going to just pause the video and write an answer and just go through it. You don't really want to watch me writing. Okay, so here we go. We've got, in 1960, 80% of the men and 24% of the women smoked. The amount of men smoking dropped rapidly to 20% by 2008, whereas women stayed between 20 to 25% until 1990, when it started to drop, reaching 16% in 2008. This reduction in smoking should lead to a lower risk of cardiovascular disease because alveoli will have less damage, so more oxygen can get into the blood. Nicotine is a stimulant, so heart rate and blood pressure reduce when you quit smoking. There is less chance of a blood clot, so less chance of heart attack or stroke. How many marks would I get? Well, the mark scheme wants me to say that the trend is downwards. Women are less likely to smoke than men. Ooh, now I implied that, didn't I? Because I was like 80% of men and 24% of women, down to 20% and 16%, but I didn't say it outright. So do I get that? The trend for men decreasing is more steeply than for women. Ooh, did I say that? It dropped rapidly, whereas the women stayed the same and then started to drop. Maybe, but maybe I could have said it better. It should lead to a decreasing occurrence of cardiovascular disease, and the decrease in cardiovascular disease in men would be greater than in women. I definitely did not say that last one. So, less damage to alveoli, less fatty deposits built up in arteries. Oh, I didn't put that one. Nicotine with raising heart rate and blood pressure is reduced, and blood clotting is reduced. So what would I give me? I didn't write that last one. I didn't make it really clear that men would have a bigger drop in cardiovascular disease because they had a bigger drop in smoking. So I think I did interpret the graph and the explanation linked with knowledge and logical connections in context with the question. So I would say either 4 or 5 marks. You know what? What do you think I should get? You figure out how many marks I would get for that. And you figure out how many marks you would get for that as well. Okay? So have a think about that. To be honest, I gave myself a mark earlier that I was a bit iffy about. I would probably only give myself 4 marks for that. Some examiners might give me 4, some might give me 5. So, yeah. I think if you're nice to yourself for 1 mark, be really nasty on the next one. That will give you a true picture of how many marks you'd get just for exam technique. This isn't about memory recall. This is about you've got all the information, you can look it up. It's not about recall, it's about how you write down the answers. So, how well did you do with this paper? Did you just do the 3 questions I did? Or did you do the whole lot? Which, quite frankly, it's going to take you well over an hour and 3/4 if you are looking up all of your answers. But please do let me know how you got on. And next one will be a chemistry paper. And again, I'll do 3 questions for that, this time focusing on how the recall works along with it. Okay, take care and see you soon. Bye.